Welcome to the Music Life Social Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Raheem, aka Big Heem, in the building.
Rob Villa, aka Mr. Popular, representing MLS and that double S.
G-Wiz in the house, representing MLS and the West Coast.
And tonight we have a very special guest with us, a fascinating musician known for his contributions to the neo-soul and acid jazz music scene around the globe and here in Atlanta. He will also be performing at the Atlanta Jazz Festival this year. He is Grammy award-winning bassist Khari Cabral Simmons is in the house.
People, I appreciate it.
How's
everybody doing?
Thank you.
Man, we're great. Enjoying life, man. Enjoying life, brother. Enjoying life.
Good. Thank you for having me here, gents. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah.
No problem, man. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Please. Yep, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. Yeah, I'm fresh out of rehearsal, so I'm in music mode, so it's a good time. Yeah, all the stuff is flowing, so it's a good time to be talking at somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely so.
So right off the top, I gotta ask you, man, were you part of the neo soul and acid jazz scene here in the mid '90s in Atlanta at like Apache Cafe with Donnie and India Irie and things like that? Was you hitting the stage then? Because I think I'm pretty sure I remember you, brother. I know I've seen you around playing.
Yeah.
Man, you that's hit at direct center, because that was the era and that was the time. I was at Morehouse from about 91 to 96.
Okay.
And then one day, and if you were around at that time, you're probably thinking the same thing. You're probably experienced what I experienced. I kept hearing about the Yin Yang Cafe. Mm-hmm. And then I heard that there was a band at the Yin Yang called The Chronicle. I went in and saw Little John and The Chronicle perform, and changed my musical life, because I just saw an example of like what great musicianship was in front of my eyes, on the weekly. And it was shortly after, probably about 2-3 years of going to the Yin Yang, that one night The Chronicle couldn't make it. Mm-hmm. And then I had, at that time, I knew India, I knew Donnie, as well as like Anthony David, a couple of other people who were circulating around in that arts community right there around the Thomas, some other people. And they, the owners of the Yin Yang, asked us to sub for The Chronicle. And we went in, got everybody's music, maybe a couple of covers that we liked, and presented a whole thing. And the night was such a success that they started making what was it called? Like Soulful Fridays, because Neo Soul, the term, wasn't around at that point. Yeah, and we started doing it. So I was a part of that artist collective, which was called Groovement. I was a part of that artist collective, with Donnie, with India, Monique Miller, Sirius B, Dana Johnson, and Denise Avery Sunshine, all those people. Yeah, that's exactly where I came up.
Okay. Yeah, for clarification, what Khari is saying, for the folks that are not from Atlanta, he's not talking about the Yin Yang Twins, he's talking about the Yin Yang Cafe, and if I'm not mistaken, you're talking about Little John Roberts, not Little John in the East Side Boys. Shout out to Little John and the East Side Boys.
Respect and all, yes.
Yeah. The jazz artist, Little John Roberts. So
correct.
We just put that audience out there, let them know.
Thank you
what
for that.
the Yin Yang Twins? Little John was doing acid jazz,
you're right.
Like, can't do, but
Smart. Yeah, very smart. Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about acid jazz for a second, man.
Please.
Now, jazz, itself has always been a art form where African Americans had a chance to present their worldview, their struggle, being able to communicate. And with acid jazz being a subgenre of that, with combining hip hop, soul, funk, how would you define acid jazz or jazz itself for you? What is that definition to you? What does that mean to you?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go for acid jazz because if I
Okay.
try to define jazz, we're going to be here a little bit longer than
Okay.
y'all
Okay.
expect to be. But if I would, but acid jazz, and I say this just from also just seeing how it all came about. You hit it exactly right, because it really is that period in the '90s when hip hop production techniques started to find its way into other genres of music. And a lot of people started to, hip hop would sample everything, right? The people who are grabbing stuff off of records, it's brilliance.
Mm.
The 2, the 4, the 8 bars that people are finding, you know what I mean? The 1 bar, that people are finding to create songs.
Right.
And when that started to happen more in jazz, it was a movement. While it had a foothold, I think here in the States, and certainly a foothold with us as Black Americans for sure. A lot of that was happening in the UK. So it was still, a movement, and a movement with a lot of people of color. But a lot of that was coming from the UK, and they were chopping up these jazz records, putting it on top of a lot of house beats a lot of the time and stuff like that. But then it was the '90s, so you also had the '70s revival going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you described exactly what it is, where it's just really not in a way that happens now that you kind of hear from like a Robert Glasper or Kendrick Lamar standpoint of sampling jazz records and putting them into a soulful context or hip hop context or just a straight jazz context. But I decidedly think that it's about those SP 1200s, that MPC 3000, all the, you know what I mean? That Ensoniq, that first Ensoniq keyboard, that Akai rack mounted sampler.
Mm-hmm.
That's the stuff. The 16-bit, all that was crunchy. And then, you had these people making these beats, but instead of rapping over them, here comes Courtney Pine playing saxophone over them. Instead of that, here comes a guitarist like Ronnie Jordan playing jazz guitar over it, And then also here comes a brilliant person like Bluey from Incognito composing a song over it, And while I think that the UK had the strongest foothold in that, it certainly showed up a lot of other places. And at that time, I was buying records, CDs left and right, like everything that was coming out,
Right.
and that was the era of compilations.
Yes.
Right. So that was the era of, something volume 1, right? Rebirth of the Cool volume 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and all of that. So I was getting everything and just taking all of it in.
And when you say that too, as well, as far as with, we can get into, I guess, your latest project a little bit later in the interview, but
excellent.
It got me thinking about, as far as with, because all of us are kind of like, we're basic music enthusiasts, but everybody just came up in hip hop, so I can distinctly remember like that time in like the early '90s when Tribe, De La, they were sampling jazz, and Guru with his Jazzmatazz series, it kind of, as far as where I can say, I speak for all of us, where we can like, hold up, what did they sample from that? And even right now, I'm trying to find the artist who sampled, I bookmark who sampled Nas' The World Is Yours when Pete Rock sampled. That's like, I seen it on social media where that's like, hold up, it was brilliant how they, how jazz is still at the birth, the essence of it, the birth of, as far as with all these other genres which Black Americans created, but they add a little twister, like you talking about how acid jazz, really the UK had their foothold on it, but it came to the States and it's just like, because I remember listening to acid jazz back then, I was like, some added a boom bap to it, like, because boom bap was a big thing in like the early '90s and leading up into the mid '90s. So what can you speak on that, as far as on that aspect of that, as far as with when you first touched into acid jazz, with going, like you said, he was going deep into the series of like these different volumes, like what particular artist or something that you just like, okay, this is my guy, this is my girl, a band or whatnot?
Well, the one thing. Well, you actually, I'll take on the last word you just said because I think that that's actually a really interesting part about the acid jazz movement. Uh, that last part you said was you said band, and what's interesting is that you really do have these production, the production technique that's like we were just talking about, and like you said, boom bap comes in, and this is really it's really that we're influencing the world with hip hop. It's just that some people are taking a different route over it. Like eventually people start singing over it, right? And it kind of leans us into this thing that ultimately becomes neo soul, right? And then the people who are, playing sax solos, trumpet solos over it, then eventually yes, okay, this is acid jazz. But another thing about the acid jazz movement is that the acid jazz movement had such a strong presence of bands, as well as people who were producers and very good soloists who were coming together to create this new sound, in this newly cultivated, genre. But it was an era of bands, and not just bands, but an era of big bands, not in the Ellington sense, but in the tradition of Confunction, in the tradition of Earth, Wind and Fire, in the tradition of,
Cool in the game.
Kool and the Gang.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Early Cameo.
Yeah. Oh,
Right? Yeah. Okay. Yes.
That's
Right.
insane.
Early
Late
Cameo
style,
though.
like it's a
Yeah.
band. It's a whole band.
Yes. And this is what I'm saying. That, we know that, right? Like we know that stuff. And I think at this point, it's safe to say that stuff is always going to be known. I think every generation is going to have an interaction with that music, But in that time, we started to see brand new heavies. We started to see Jamiroquai. We started to see, Galliano. We started to see Swing Out Sister. We started to see Incognito.
Yep.
Okay, so here comes all these bands, 3-piece horn section, 2-3 singers, percussionist, you know what I mean? Thumping bass, Fender Rhodes, you know what I mean? And that was a big part. That kind of just got folded into the acid jazz movement. Now, some people like to say it's UK soul or something like that, especially if you start talking about Omar. But that was a big part of it. And that was one of the things that influenced me so much because I was listening to all the CDs like you were just talking about. I think you hit on the most important one, really, when you said Guru, right? Because Guru kind of, to me, bridged it together at that time better than anybody. And I know that we have Tribe. And I also know that we have a couple singles. We have like Cool Like That, right? Like, of course, in that song.
And all that, yeah.
All of that. And so we do. But Guru is like volume 1, 2, and 3 with it, right?
Yes.
And so I really think that he brought out a whole lot in what I would call the acid jazz time, in that bridging of hip hop and jazz, So I mean, I think that that's a big important part of it. But those bands, seeing these 10-piece bands, so I'd be listening to the Guru, but also seeing those bands made me say, that's what I'm gonna do.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I would say if I was stranded on a desert island and I had one thing to listen to, it would definitely be Guru's Volume 1, Jasmine Taz. That's the album that I think it's one of the top 5 albums of all time in any genre. That's just my opinion. But touching upon you, you're a bassist, and I guess I'm wondering, when did you?
Yes, sir.
Why did you decide to pick up that particular instrument? And secondly, upon picking up that instrument, did you realize that this would be your call? This is what you were going to do for the rest of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I can answer that. So I So I moved to New Jersey and I lived there between the ages of like 10 to 16, 17 years old. The area of New Jersey I was in was Princeton, New Jersey.
Okay.
Great place, great town, great black community, also predominantly Caucasian. Probably not a shock, right? Yeah, this is right. I don't see anybody like, right? Yeah. So yeah, right. We know. Okay. So as I'm around and I start to think to myself, because I'm in love with records at that point, you know what I mean? I'm definitely a music lover, probably like all of us were. But what was going on in Princeton, New Jersey, was there was a culture of bands. Now they were rock bands, primarily. So when I was a freshman in high school, the seniors at that school were a band that's called Blues Traveler, out there in sort of the rock jam band scene, right? The juniors had a band, and they weren't all the way formed yet, but it was 3 members of the Spin Doctors, right?
Oh.
So there's a culture of bands, especially this sort of like what they call now jam bands, right? And so for me, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And a dude who played keyboards next to me, like a few houses down, we decided to start a band. That was the first thing. I said, let's start a band. Yeah, I want to be in a band before I played an instrument. And we were talking. He's like, well, yeah, because you could just take guitar lessons. I was like, yeah. And then he's like, or you could play bass. And in my head, I said, bass. Yeah, that's the instrument that I hear on Lady Cab Driver by Prince. Yup.
Okay.
Yup. That's what I want to do. Yeah, bass.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the first thing in my head. I was like, yeah, that's that Lady Cab Driver sound. Okay. Yeah. And then that's how I started playing bass guitar. And I think when I realized that this was I kept playing bass guitar all throughout high school. By the time I was at Morehouse and I started meeting, all these other musicians, it became clear to me. I think I knew it because maybe my freshman or sophomore year. I actually know one freshman year. I think it was my sophomore year. But we went to see A Tribe Called Quest perform at Emory University.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, concert. And the opening band was Arrested Development.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
This is right around the time of Low End Theory.
Yeah, around that. Yeah, I remember that very
91,
well.
92.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember.
Okay. Yes. And when I saw Arrested Development, I said, okay, that's where I'm supposed to be, and that's what I'm supposed to be doing. When I saw them play live, I was like, okay, I'm supposed to be their bass player. That's what it is. And from then, I think I just decided that that was it to me.
I do have.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say.
And you hit Atlanta. Go ahead, Gary. Go ahead.
Atlanta itself, being in Atlanta at that particular time, what role do you think that it played in you choosing this path? Because had you been in, let's say, Seattle or Chicago or anywhere else, what does Atlanta play in terms of this path that you've chosen?
Man, I have to say, I love that question. I do, because I do feel that, already being a bass player, that's what I would have done. And I also think really brilliant of you to even mention Seattle, because Seattle is one of the most happening music scenes, right? Fertile music scenes at that time, without a doubt. So I mean, it is, what happens if you're in Seattle as opposed to what happens if you're in Atlanta? How does that play a part? And I'll start to answer it this way with a little bit of context, maybe a little bit of history, such as I know it. A guy named Carl Injects, a DJ. DJ Injects was doing a night with, I think at the time it was Little John, Billy Odom on guitar, and Avery Johnson, the guitar, drums, and bass of the Chronicle. And they were doing a thing called House of Love. And Injects was the DJ, but Injects was in touch with all these people from New York and in all over Europe. And he was DJing what we were talking about, this early acid jazz. This is the first guy, playing Snowboy, Galliano, Incognito, Omar, right? Like he's the first person doing it. Then, and this is a crucial part to answer the question. Two DJs, Ken Beatty and Ken Rye from WCLK, used to have, Beatty had a show, Hot Ice in the Afternoon, at that time. They start going to these events. They hear Injects spinning all this stuff they haven't heard before. And then one day, probably after a month or two, they walk up to him. Hey, they introduce themselves. Oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, sure, I've heard your show. And they just said, hey, man, what is this music? What are you playing? He's like, oh, yeah, well, this is a label called Acid Jazz. This is a label called Talkin' Loud. These people are really great. I'm sure they'd love to get you their stuff. Now, what happens in that instance is you have WCLK, which has a high listenership in Atlanta, right? It's a jazz station that at that time, drive time easily was 500,000 people tuning in, right? Easily at that time, it was that. Well, what happened is you took a station with that high number of listenership, and all of a sudden, these underground records are being played next to Grover Washington Jr., next to Anita Baker, next to the George Benson, next to the Chick Corea Electric Band, and on and on and on and on, right? Mm-hmm. So the underground stuff in Atlanta really was not underground. The underground stuff in Atlanta was being heard with all the other popular or mainstream jazz stuff, Marcus Miller, the Michel Ndegeocello, whatever, right? And so they really opened up their format to include this new sound. What I did not realize back then is that most places were not doing that. If you wanted those records, go down to your local record store, or even at that time, you could also go Tower Records, and you're going to see a section where you can go and you could get you Jaleesa or Outside or Brand New Heavies or, and whatever you want. But in Atlanta, we're 500,000 people a day, right, at drive time are hearing this music. So I'm getting this music. Eventually I go and seek these people out at CLK and find out what they're playing. They let me come in and look. They let me look at their CD collection. They let me look at everything, and everything. So I'm just absorbing that. But so to answer what you posed, what you proposed in that question, how does Atlanta affect me? It really affects me in that way that this music was heard by us, because maybe New York had it just as good, maybe. But outside of that, a lot of places did not. I mean, that swing out. And the other thing is, it showed because, in music, so they're all tracking record sales. Now, all these, and I got the stories from all these people because I went to all these shows and then I talked to them. I stay in touch with a handful of them. And they all came to America. They were ready to go to New York. They're ready to go to LA or maybe San Francisco, because I think Ubiquity Records was doing some stuff out of there with the Gray Boy All-Stars and all that kind of stuff. Okay. But they all said, wait a minute. You've got to make a stop while you're there. You've got to go to Atlanta. Where? Atlanta. Where's that? Southeast. There's a city, yada, yada, yada. But for some reason, you have more plays in this city called Atlanta than you have had anywhere. I think we need to find a promoter. I think we need to book a show. Enter in all these people who were doing all these promotions. I mean, the Chocolate Soul, Will Griggs, the Jason Orr Funk Jazz Cafe, all these kinds of things, right? Yeah. So, because that was a part of that ecosystem that was here. So me in Atlanta, why does it make a difference? Because this is where and I don't know I haven't heard anybody else talk about this. Now I know probably DC, Chicago, and New York, but also Atlanta. And I don't know if anybody had it stronger than we did in terms of putting all these artists together so that you could hear the next stage of all this stuff along with the classic.
Yeah.
And that's what influenced me, because I'm getting schooled on Roy Ayers, right? But at the same time, I'm getting all the Jamiroquai.
And that's the old saying in the railroad industry: whether you're going to heaven or hell, you got to go through Atlanta. So that's.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. And it was a beautiful thing. And I mean, and I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to share this one story because I think it speaks to what we're talking about with jazz as an art form. And because we're talking so much about the UK, I just wanted to mention this part. There was a band called James Taylor Quartet that came from over there. This dude did some like funky organ music, and then he did a record where he started leaning into like the acid jazz and the soul sort of stuff. He did those records, and I think he got I think there were some harsh critics in the UK of that, and I understand we probably all know the UK, these are record lovers. And like Royers would say, he goes to the UK and he has to pull out tunes that he doesn't have to pull out for America, because these people are inside those records, right? We know the European obsession with jazz and Black American popular music. So, of course, but this guy, James Taylor, came over, and he came to WCLK to speak with Jamal Ahmed, right? Who back then had a show called Groove Gumbo. Now he has the show, Sounds of Universal Love. But, back then it was a show called Groove Gumbo. James Taylor walked up in that studio, and it's me, it's Donnie. I don't know if India was there or not, but it was like, 6, 7 of us just waiting around just to meet him because we loved his records. So he walked in and he was happy to meet everybody, and his vibe was cool, but he was confused, right? So he sat down for the interview, and we're just hanging around watching him in the interview. So I'm sure he's thinking, why are there all these people, or what do they all work here? And after a moment or two, what he starts to understand is, hang on a minute. These people are here because of my records. Did the interview, brilliant interview with Jamal asking great questions. And afterwards, this Caucasian Brit was sitting there at the table. He looked around and he said, "You know what? I did those 2 soul albums and I got cut up by critics in the UK for doing it. But, pardon me, excuse me, hope I'm not being offensive, but the music I'm doing is the music from you all. And if it's not you all, it's the music that your parents were doing, produced, wrote, put out, marketed. This is the music I love, but I gave my version back. Put my version of it back out into the universe, and you all are receiving it." He was like, "You don't understand. For me, he's like, it was mind blowing for him, and he was just like, and he was like, I'll never listen to it again." But that's Atlanta, right? Yeah. That's not the New York experience, the Chicago experience. That's not the other one. That's here. That happened. So that's, me, artist, bassist here in Atlanta. That's what that means. I mean, that's what that is. This place, we had something going on that the rest of America really didn't. Again, maybe those 3 other cities, but we had it.
it's like grit stick to your ribs, like
Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
you get the other stuff, but like you want some grits, you come down south. It may be fine in
Correct.
every area, but like
Yeah. Correct.
fill you up.
Correct.
Okay?
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
We don't need to go to Boston for fish and grits. No,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Respect to Boston and all Boston does well. Yeah.
I got a question. Like I had listened to your latest project, you know, the Soul Bosa.
Oh yeah.
Soul Bosa project.
Yeah.
Now I'm starting to get into Brazilian, you know, bossa nova, Brazilian jazz and whatnot. And matter of fact, you can tell we was in New Orleans like a couple of weeks ago, and we've been collecting records, so it's like I'm collecting a lot of vinyl. And someone called Astrid Gilberto,
Yeah, that Astrid Gilberto. Oh yes, sir.
yeah, love her.
Yes.
Rest in peace. And listen to your album, and I'm like, I don't know if this is something new. Like, is this like a genre that you're part of, or you helped create the Soul Bosa? Is that something that's the name of the and I love your backstory, how I guess D Nice kind of gave you the idea, you know, indirectly gave you the idea. So you know what? Let me get back in, you know, get back in the groove of things, not just, you know, put my talents to use, not just quote unquote, all of us sitting around was like, is the world going to end because of COVID and all that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like the Soul Bosa album, how did that come about? And the title too alone, which is brilliant. But I love my son, he was listening to it today. He's like, oh, okay, because he's a drummer.
Okay. So there's a lot in there.
So like, how did that come about? Like the Soul Bosa for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super happy to talk to that. So, you know, I loved bossa nova, right? I always loved bossa nova, and I always loved I love Brazilian music, but I didn't get into it right away listening to the authentic stuff. In fact, one of the first albums that where I really thought that I think I really got some Brazilian, you know, really kind of discovered it, was an album by the Manhattan Transfer, the vocal group, Manhattan Transfer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mom had
that. Okay, good. I love who I'm talking to here. Okay, so the Manhattan Transfer, they did an album called Brazil, and they did songs by a Brazilian composer whose name was Javan, who is really kind of like the Sting of Brazil, and that might limit him a bit because he really also produced a lot of stuff. And but they did that record. I heard it. I always sort of loved bossa nova, and I had come across the Sergio Mendes and Brazil '66 record, you know, maybe in like the early '90s. You know, I was hearing some of that, but that is a lot of what has to do with it for me. And Sergio Mendes is also like a high mark. So when it was time to make my band, I was really steering it in a way like Sergio Mendes and Brazil '66, which is like the most popular band. But he did an album. He did an album called Sergio Mendes and the New Brazil '77.
That's got that on the way. It's coming. I got it coming. Order that last week. I knew he was about to say that when the album coming on. I knew he was about to say it. I was like, hold on. He said 66. I got 77 on the way right now.
Okay. All right. I won't say too much.
He did a cover song. They did the cover songs of some of the.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the unique thing about that record, and especially as we're talking soul and bossa, here we go, right? Because it's deep. I know we all love this stuff, so but man, so that record is Sergio Mendes. It is some Brazilian percussionists. So it's a beautiful thing. At the same time, there's a lot of buzz going on up at the recording studio that I have in Atlanta. So it's just been a lot of buzz on the recording side today.
Right.
And now there's going to be a lot of buzz on the performance side tomorrow. I love the balance, so I'm happy.
What do you got? I mean, not to spill if you got it under caps
Oh,
and under wraps,
no,
but
no, 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 no,
what's
no
about?
caps and
Yeah,
wraps. I'm happy to, yeah, I'm happy. Yeah, no spoilers everywhere. I'm good. Yeah, yeah, man. So for me, I really, as and as we're mentioning acid jazz being that music that borrows, in addition to hip hop and house music production styles, influencing jazz music. Another part of what gets folded into the acid jazz movement is a 70s sort of resurrection, and you see the emergence of the 70s big bands, like we all used to see when we're talking Ohio Players, when we're talking the Commodores, of course, when we're talking about Earth, Wind and Fire, and on, right? And we saw the emergence of those bands again in the 90s with the Brand New Heavies, with De-Influence, with Incognito, and Jamiroquai. So I really was thinking not too long ago, as the industry has changed so much since the 90s, I find that there are fewer and fewer large bands, and more and more I've just been thinking, man, what would it have been like for me if I hadn't had the opportunity to really get to see in person 10, 12-piece bands on stage coming and doing their thing. Now, a lot of people didn't get to experience that in the 90s, right? That's just a select few cities that get to experience that. But I think in Atlanta now, how, how often do people get to see that? So we're going to bring the 10-piece unit on tomorrow, man. So on Saturday, May 24th, 1 p.m. at the Jazz Festival, the tenor sax, the trumpet, the trombones got to be there, man. The keyboard, the guitar, the percussion, the drums has got to be there. 2 female vocalists have to be there. And I'm gonna turn up the bass just a little louder than I should, but nonetheless,
Nice.
yeah. So that's what we're gonna bring.
For sure. That's gonna be a great
Yes. I think it's gonna be beautiful. I want to be able to give that back. A vision of unity and community, musically and visually. You know what I mean? Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Nice.
As far as future endeavors, man, what's in store for you?
Well, from here, it's been really exciting for us as Atlanta musicians to be able to play on the Atlanta Jazz Festival stage. It's really a treat. It's really an honor. And it also has made us excited to get into some more stuff as a 10-piece unit. So after this, we're going to go back into the studio, and we're going to do a single. We have a single. I know I'm talking to record people here. We did a single. One of the groups that we love so much, me and a couple of people in the band, is the stuff done by a producer called August Darnell. And August Darnell had a couple of groups that he did, but the 2 most famous ones were Dr. Buzzard's original Savannah Band with that Cherchez La Femme. And then the other one he had that was really popular was one called Kid Creole and the Coconuts. Right?
Oh, wow.
And and these guys were great at taking sort of that late 70s disco energy, or maybe some of that early 80s boogie, and blending it with a Duke Ellington big band swing sensibility. Excuse me. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a song that is a bit of it's us. It sounds like us, and we can't help it sounding like us, but it's our homage to that vibe and that style. So we'll probably finish that up, release a single, maybe in the next couple months.
Nice.
That's wonderful, man. That's wonderful.
That's gonna be
Just trying to see where you guys are gonna go from there. Then I guess, because I mean, I know that they said once one of your partners heard 3 of your songs, you ended up getting a deal. So I'm pretty sure, I don't know whatever you guys put together, it's probably going to lead to another, another venture, maybe, possibly.
Yes, I'm and that's exactly what we're open to always and looking for. But yeah, we can't wait to really release some new music, some fresh sounds that feel fresh to us and hopefully sound fresh to a handful of listeners out there.
Yeah, because your last album, The Five, man, I was really listening to that. That was a great album. You have singers on there that from Atlanta, Georgia, or whatnot, and it's just really just spot on. It's upbeat and everything, and then you on the bass. Like I think I said this before, man. You were giving me flashbacks of Bobby Humphrey's album, man. Harlem River Runs or whatever. You know what I mean. So you're really doing your thing. So, you know what I'm saying. So
I have an ear that bends toward bass wise. That certainly bends toward like 1977 to 1983 at times. So you know what you're hearing. You're hitting it right on the mark. I really appreciate a lot of the bass work from that time. Of course, there's bass work from all at all points that has meant a lot. But I really like a lot of the bass work, bass tones, the production styles even of that era. So yeah, you're hitting it right on the mark, and I appreciate that. That's a compliment. Thank you. And I'm glad that you enjoyed the album 5. We really drew from, making sure that the sound of Black popular music from the late 70s and 80s was a big influence this time, whereas a lot of the time there's jazz, there's bossa nova, and there's all these other things that wind up being influences for us when we're making a record. But that time, that especially that 80s boogie period was really honest when we were doing that record, really honest when we were doing it.
And I could hear it, man, especially in the vocals. But Cleveland Jones,
that's right.
What I'm saying? I want to give them their props and everything too. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. All those great singers. Yes, indeed. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, again, so many great Atlanta singers to choose from, including the song with Liz Wright, featuring jazz vocalist Liz Wright, who is also from the Atlanta music scene. Yep, exactly. Also from the Atlanta music scene. I'll see you over there. Yeah. We had a drummer and a percussionist in here today getting done with some stuff. So everybody's flowing in and out here. I'm going to have to have you guys over to this studio, 800 East Studios. I'm going to have you guys. Maybe what we could do is figure out a special edition of your podcast where we come do it live in studio. There's a big room where the orchestras record with strings. There's pianos, Fender Rhodes, and clavinets, and bass amps and guitar amps all around. It might be a nice thing. Yeah, maybe we could talk about that.
Sure, we need to talk about that. Yeah, that's
okay. Good.
Yeah, I think that sound like
Right.
You can figure that out.
The general spoken.
Yes. What we're eventually trying to do is we're trying to do kind of how NPR does their Tiny Desk concerts. We're trying to go kind of in that realm also.
It'll be phenomenal if we can have a little rendition of whatever y'all feel like exposing.
Especially for a lot of musicians here in Atlanta.
We can do a whole little series, like, listen, don't start nothing, don't start nothing.
I think we already did.
Right.
Yeah, I think we already did. So we're all open to that conversation. Done.
Okay, for sure.
Yes. So tell the people where they can find you at online and everything, where they can follow you and hear your music and things like that.
Absolutely. So you can follow. We have a website that right now is just KhariCabralSimmons.com, KhariCabral Simmons with 2 M's, right? So that's our .com, but also our handle on Instagram is Khari Cabral Njiva, Jiva, and anything that we're doing is definitely going to get posted up there as well. Nice. We're also I'm active on my Facebook page as well, but the band's very active on our Instagram page.
Right.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely. Yes.
And shout out to the band too, man. I mean, shout out to the band.
Yes. No. An amazing crew of musicians. Janelle Monet's percussionist. Rafael Pereira is with us. the amazing Landon Anderson, who plays with everybody from 112 to Howard Hewitt, is on drums with us. Rodney Edge on keyboards. The man plays keyboards with Anita Baker and bass with After Seven. Right? The incredible exploratory guitarist Trevor Wolford, who is an amazing jazz guitarist, but just is like searches for sounds. He's like cinematic with his approach to it. All Leos on horn. I don't know how that happened, but the great all Leos, man. Somebody pointed it out, and I was like, if I had known, I would have put a Libra in there somewhere or something. You know what I mean? But yeah, 3 Leos. All Leos. So Dashiell Smith on trumpet, Wes Funderburk on trombone, Vinny D'Agostino, the section leader, on sax, and then our vocalists are going to be the great Shonda Lee, and then Lava High.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Oh, it's a crew. Whew, it's a roster. Thank you. It's a roster.
I'm gonna try to make my way out there to the park tomorrow, man, and come check you all out, man, for sure. Good.
Yo, yeah, man. Yeah. Please come on out there, man. We'd love to see you out there and give you a shout, man. So come on.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
I know you're busy. We're not gonna hold you, man. We appreciate your time.
Appreciate
That's all right.
Little glimpse. Yes, I'm gonna try to.
Khari Cabral Simmons, y'all.
Thank you.
Stay connected.
Yes. Please, by all means. And then we'll get on this and we'll have another discussion about just albums and whenever y'all want. And I'm happy to host. I'm happy to host in our humble abode. I am very happy to host you guys and have you in for like where all the good gear and stuff lives here.
Nice. Yes. We appreciate it, brother.
Absolutely, man. Likewise.